Welcome to Historic Preservation by the Numbers, the March 2020 alternative presentation of Arch Inc.'s Fun and Free Lecture Series. This community education program is supported by funding from Arch United of Greater Fort Wayne and the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne, and Arch is very grateful for their support. I'm Connie Haas-Zuber, Executive Director of Arch Inc., the Fort Wayne Region's Historic Preservation Organization. My purpose today is to explore with you just how big the numbers behind historic preservation are in this area and why that's important. I'm going to argue it's an impressive investment. This 1880s bird's eye view map of Fort Wayne gives us a sense of the history behind the numbers. You can see what's built up and what's not, and it gives us an idea of where we'll be looking when we look for the historic investment in the city of Fort Wayne. Similar thinking is what's going to guide anybody who looks anywhere to see where the historic investment is in the places they're interested in. This impressive investment we're exploring together is one to be proud of. I'm also arguing that this impressive investment is one that the conscientious person would want to protect. Our present has been built on this impressive investment, and I'm arguing we should want to build our future on this impressive investment. The two key questions are, how big is this historical investment, and where is it? So we're going to spend some time looking for context and doing a little geography study. Here's some useful context. For historic preservationists, historic means things built 50 years ago or earlier, so we're talking about buildings built in 1970 or earlier. Also, we have good access to data on residences built in 1939 and earlier, so we'll use that as a measure too. Top-level data is useful to provide a baseline that we will use to seek contrast to find higher historic percentages, so we can then look in those areas that have the higher percentages to identify what the values are and find out what our historic investment is. Our top level data is for the Metro Fort Wayne area. 62.2% of the residences were built in 1970 or earlier, and 15.6% of the residences were built 1939 or earlier. In the city of Fort Wayne itself, a similar 66.7% of the residences were built in 1970 or earlier, and 15.3% of the residences were built in 1939 or earlier. I have chosen to use townships as the smaller divisions of Allen County that we're going to look at as we explore percentages of historic properties and decide where we're going to look to find the value of our historic investment. So here's Allen County and its townships. Now we can all understand what is where and what we're talking about. This map conveniently also has all the incorporated areas, Fort Wayne, New Haven, and the other incorporated towns and cities, colored in to help us orient ourselves. We're going to explore 5 of the townships, the most populous ones, and the ones populated in the right historic eras to be historic. And we're going to go through them in alphabetical order just to see what can be seen, and we will end up learning where the historic investment is, and then we'll use that guidance to do the assessment of the by the numbers point of this whole exploration. Here's the data on Aboit Township. 25.1% of its residences were built 1970 or earlier. 1.3% of them were built 1939 or earlier. In Aboit Township, most of the development occurred in the 1970s and later. Here's the data on Adams Township. 75.6% of its residential development happened in 1970 or earlier, and 8.2% happened in 1939 or earlier. Most of Adams Township's residential development happened in the 1960s and later. Here's the data on St. Joseph's Township. 59.2% of its residential development happened in 1970 and earlier. 2% of the residential development happened in 1939 or earlier. Most of St. Joseph Township's residential development happened in the 1960s and later. Here's the data on Washington Township. 51.4% of its residential development happened in 1970 or earlier, and 5.3% happened in 1939 or earlier. Most of Washington Township's residential development happened in the 1960s and later. Here's the data on Wayne Township. 88.8% of its residential development happened in 1970 or earlier, and 39.4% of its residential development happened in 1939 or earlier. Most of its residential development happened in 1939 and earlier. I hope I have not gone through this data so quickly that you are unable to recognize the dramatic difference of these numbers right here. So we have a target to study. Wayne Township is where to look if you want to start learning about the value of old places. Our next challenge is to figure out, what are these old places worth? To do that, I decided to find out the assessed property value in Wayne Township. And I had the invaluable help of the Wayne Township Assessor's Office for that, for which I want to say thank you right now. The big facts about property value in Wayne Township are that it has been growing. The 2010 residential assessed property value was $1,944,359,098. By 2020, the residential assessed property value had grown to $2,819,911,300, an impressive increase. Other things that I think we need to think about as we reflect on this are that back in 2007, the median home value in Wayne Township was only $74,600. That's not very much in comparison to the other places in Allen County. Most of these other townships that we looked at, the median home value was over $100,000 at least. I also want us to think about the role of historic districts in the home value question, because we have some really good big numbers about that to think about. The rise in home value in Wayne Township home historic districts from 2010, after the last big recession, to 2018 was 46.7% in West Central and 44.2% in Williams Woodland. Overall, the township home values rose 18.9% in that time to a total of $2,311,623,700. Historic designations work, and they have been working well for the homeowners of West Central and Williams Woodland, who are two long-standing and well-organized historic districts and with committed homeowners in them. To turn the corner and to begin talking about the historic investment in Wayne Township, I'm going to use that lower number, the 1939 and earlier percentage of 39%, and I'm going to take a third to a half of the residential assessed value and say that the historical portion estimate of the Wayne Township assessed value is 939 to 1 million to 1.4 billion. Okay, the title of this presentation is Historic Preservation by the Numbers. So let's look at these numbers. And I remind you, this is Wayne Township only and residential only. $939 million to $1.4 billion as a heritage investment. I think that's a pretty big number. I want to be able to talk about the heritage investment for more than just Wayne Township, and here are some other things I think we need to consider. First of all, that low median home value of $74.6 thousand in 2007 is not a good guide, so we need to discount that and remember that things have been improving dramatically in Wayne Township and all over Allen County since then. We also need to think about the fact that the most valuable homes in Wayne Township may well be the older and or oldest ones, given that data we got about the dramatic increases in home values in historic districts. Also, the other townships may add considerable heritage investment value with their higher per home value, even though the historic home percents are lower and the high-priced new suburban homes could throw off the balance. Also, I want to consider the investment value of historic commercial and industrial property. And I have information about the assessed property value of those properties, again, with thanks to the Wayne Township Assessor's Office. Here are the numbers from the Assessor's Office. The 2010 assessed value of commercial and industrial properties in Wayne Township was $1,258,567,300. In 2020, that number had grown to $1,421,795,500. Using my same one-third to one-half historical portion estimate process, that gives us a historical investment estimate of $474 to $711 million for the commercial and industrial properties in Wayne Township. There are other factors to consider with this commercial industrial historic investment estimate also. This estimate is tricky. Industrial properties are expensive and have undergone much change. Commercial properties were well developed by World War II, but have also undergone much change. We have lost a lot of these buildings, and a lot of these buildings have been replaced. Here's an example that shows how much our commercial landscape has changed. This is a 1929 Central Business District map that stretches from East Main Street to East Jefferson and Clinton to Harrison Street. And it shows what was on the street level of each of these buildings, most of which were multi-story, obviously. I have shaded all of the buildings or blocks or spaces that have changed blue. And you can see it's more than half. Why care? Why bother adding up our heritage investment? My answer is because it's a significant investment. Because prudent people protect their significant investments. Because this particular investment is critically important to our present and our future. Now let's really look at how big I think this investment is and what I think it means. I believe we can conservatively and comfortably ballpark Allen County's total heritage investment at $2 to $3 billion. It's our homes, it's our businesses, it's our industries. And that's not even counting the related public investment in civic institutions, parks, schools, streets, sidewalks, alleys, and utilities. This is a significant investment. This is the investment worth protecting. This is the investment that built our present and the investment that we can leverage to build our future. What's the point of all this? Why did I bother adding up our heritage investment? Because it points directly to a crucial first option that I want everyone to think about, to consider, to use when they approach a development project. That first option is historic preservation. That first option is capitalize on the heritage investment first. Now we're going to go through 10 reasons why this is such a good idea. The rehabilitation of historic structures is a cost-effective reuse of existing assets, as Bergstaff Place in the former Falstaff Brewery shows. The lovely Embassy Theater is a prime example of how historic rehabilitation is a cost-competitive alternative to new construction. The Landing project is happening because historic preservation creates viable business districts. Replacing housing units is far more expensive than preserving them. This is Archie Winner from 2019 at 1014 West Washington Boulevard. The appreciation rates for downtown historic buildings and homes in historic districts often outperform the market as a whole. This is the Baker Street Station, built in 1914 as the Pennsylvania Railroad Station. Rehabilitating historic buildings is both cost-effective and energy-conserving. This is Junk Ditch Brewery in the old Cordy Paper Company warehouse. The life expectancy of rehabilitated historic buildings may well be longer than that of new structures. This is Randall Lofts in downtown Fort Wayne. Quality of life is becoming the critical ingredient in economic development, and historic preservation is an important part of the quality of life equation. The street-side life that happens outside and within historic buildings is a key part of the quality of life experience. This is a street life scene from 2019's Night of Lights on East Berry Street outside the History Center, from when Arch was distributing hot beverages to people participating in the event. Historic buildings provide efficient space for new uses. This is the Baltes Cambrai building, which has been an office building and a warehouse and is going to become a Hall's restaurant and cafe. Historic preservation will need to be part of the economic development strategy for those communities that wish to maintain a competitive edge. This is the reborn Clyde Theater. For a while it was named the Quimby, but now it's back to being the Clyde and is the place to be. I want to credit Donovan D. Ripkema, from whose book, The Economics of Historic Preservation, A Community Leader's Guide, these 10 points came. Serious research backs up each and every one of these points, and if anyone is interested in that, please call the Arch office at 426-5117 and we can talk about it, and I'd be glad to share it with you. 426-5117. That's my argument, and this is my message. The first option is capitalize on the heritage investment first. It's significant, and it can carry us through to a successful future. Thank you very much for attending this alternative presentation of Arch's March 2020 Fun and Free Lecture Series event. This has been the presentation by Connie Haas-Zuber, the Executive Director of Arch. That is Arch, Sustainability and Historic Preservation.